Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Ricci, and we'll spend 2 or 3 minutes just to introduce today's session, which is the first of a series of what we have called the final events of our Rebalance project, which comes to an end at the end of the month of November. So we're really close to the finalization of this 2-year project. Next slide, please. Marita, next, please.
Yes.
So, like I said, it's the first of a series of 4 events, as you will shortly see. Now, here we are. These events have been planned to somehow summarize and stage a final discussion on the main milestones, on the main steps of the project that has been going on for the last 2 years. So they follow the logic and the process of the project itself. A first event, which is this afternoon, is designed to recap and discuss the results of the first phase, which was the analysis of the current situation for what concerns the prevailing mobility culture, which led us to question a number of the characterizations of this current mobility culture, and led us to formulate a first step towards the manifesto, which is our ultimate goal, which we have called the claim, where there are a number of claims which are on one hand of a cultural nature, but also already claims that are policy oriented. This was our first step, which we call the language of the present, and this is the focus of today's seminar. Next Thursday and the Thursday after that, we will, with the similar format, go through the following 2 stages of the project, being the development of a vision, the needs and hope of the future, where we really started our foresight work, trying to develop a vision of what could and maybe should be a new mobility culture in 2050. And then the third and last step of our project, which is about developing a strategy based on the vision developed in the previous step, in order to be able to issue recommendations. Hopefully, policymakers will take them up. All this clearly feeds into our manifesto, which is currently already available in draft format, but that we would like to take the opportunity of these 3 events to not only summarize and start presenting, but also again raising debate and discussion on its main dimensions, in parallel, of course, with the development of a roadmap, which is also something which will be discussed in the third of these 3 events. And then finally, next slide, please. Here, finally, as you see on the bottom line of this table, we will stage what we have called our final conference or final event, which is clearly concentrating on the presentation of the final version of our manifesto. This will be a hybrid event. We'll host it in presence in Brussels on November 22nd, but also there will be the possibility to participate online. Invitations have already been sent out, but of course they will be followed up by details on the final event as it is. So once again, we are here today on the first of these events, which is highlighted in red, and we discuss the language of the present and the contribution of this first step to the development of manifesto. The central question being, how do values shape the mobility culture narrative of the present, and already with a glimpse and an anticipation of future possible evolutions. That's the plan for today and for the next events. Thank you for joining us, and I will now leave the floor to Andreu and to Lisa for the recapping of the meat of our work in this first step. Thank you. Andreu?
Yes, this is Andreu Ulied. I'm going to briefly explain you what the manifesto is gonna be about. Maybe Marita, you can remove the slide, not to confuse. Yes, thank you. So the manifesto we are about to produce is going to be a short executive document with some 25 bold ideas, meaning that is an ideological document. It's more a pamphlet than a scientific paper. This is what we are going to produce. Is more about what we aim, is about our wishes, more ethical issue than about what we know. However, of course, what we would like to emphasize in the manifesto is based on we have been learning all over this 2-year project, and it has to be grounded very much on the work of all the participants in the project. So we are going to have these 3 different sessions where colleagues leading the work on the different work packages will try to make a summary of the main findings, as well as the suggestions and the indications they have in relation to the manifesto. So we already have very interesting comments from our partners in relation to the draft manifesto, and we expect from today's session to have a more refined and deeper analysis that will help us to produce a second version. And that will be all from my side.
Okay, I guess.
So I think we can continue with task 3.1. Today we have task 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 that are going to be presented by Lisa, by Ghadir, and by Daniel. So maybe you can briefly introduce yourself and make a short presentation of the summary of findings you have for the different tasks. And maybe at the end of each brief presentation, I will ask what suggestions, what concrete suggestions you have for the manifesto. So, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Andreu. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, perfect, thanks. Wait, I tried to share my screen. 1 second. Of course, this is not the right one. Okay. Okay. Do you see now my presentation mode or not? This is a little bit strange here.
Fine, it's fine.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everybody. Sorry for the little delay. My name is Lisa Marie Schäfer. I'm a researcher at Technische University in Dresden. And I'm a psychologist and involved in the project, especially in the very first step of the project, because as Andrea already mentioned, yes, the project itself, the manifesto and the outcome of the project is a collection of a lot of different disciplines and ideas, and but we try to root that or to base that on somehow scientific feet. So this is why we developed a framework in the very beginning of the project, and yeah, and try to analyze the current status of mobility culture in European Union. And what I'm going to present you now is, first of all, what is this very first step in the project, and in the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes, we are going to talk about our concrete deliverables that we were working on. So yes, let me start. Not the right one. Okay. So I'm still, I need to change here. I have two displays. Sorry that this still happens. Okay, I'm very sorry. It's after such a long time of COVID and online webinars, this is still happening. It's really embarrassing.
Don't worry.
Okay, thank you. So, what is our motivation of the project in general? Like, why did we start this journey together? We found that the mobility culture that currently prevails in the world has led us to very unsustainable patterns. Actually, we did not only find that for mobility culture, right? We found it for like a lot of different parts of our society. But we want to like tackle this biggest issue of nowadays. And yeah, try to like give some ideas and ways to go forward to that. This is not only us who found that we have a problem, that our world is developing towards some unsustainable patterns. That is why the United Nations brought this 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I think most of you already heard about that. But I would like to like put it on this very high level, because I think it's very important to understand that we have a lot of different aspects that should be tackled nowadays, and that mobility is one big part of that. And here I highlighted like only the 4 sustainable development goals, which are like directly related to mobility. I think if you give me enough time, I could like tell you to each and every of the 17 goals an aspect which is somehow connected with mobility. But it's not only United Nations who like defined these goals. It is also the European Union who uptake that. And therefore, for instance, just one of a lot of different measures and ideas, there's a very dramatic change in sustainable urban mobility planning ideas. So we see like a big shift from the traditional transport planning that European Union tries to move towards. And the biggest shift, especially for me as a psychologist, it is very important or interesting as well, that we agree on not focusing on traffic anymore, but focusing on people. That means that we are not only like trying to enhance traffic flow capacity and speed, but also, or especially, the accessibility and the quality of life. That means in turn that it is more difficult to find like proper numbers or aspects that we have to enhance. We have to like look more deeper into what the people want and what the people do, and develop an integrated model of all aspects of mobility. That means as well that we need a very long vision strategy. But this is not the only thing that has to be done, because like focusing on the people, it is easy to be written down, but it is very difficult like to perform. And this is why we try to understand like how did this come? How did this develop? How did the traditional transport planning develop to a focus on traffic, a focus on traffic flow, on speed? How did this happen? Did this come from the people? Did this come from movement of the world? Did this come from what did this come? And so let's take a deeper look in what is then sustainable urban mobility planning. it is not only a top-down process. It does not only mean that we need to change like the political ideas and the rules and laws towards this more sustainable mobility, but to also see how the personal preferences are, how the needs are, how the mobility behavior itself is carried out nowadays, and how we can somehow like rebalance both aspects to a more sustainable mobility future. Yeah, and this is the biggest picture, the biggest idea of what we are following in the project. And this is the project plan. And we are like now in this presentation right in the middle and talking about the language of the present. In this part of the project, we developed a framework by, first of all, talking with a lot of experts from academia, especially this case, and analyzed a lot of literature, which was published on numbers and studies throughout whole European Union, yeah, in order to understand how values and culture is related and how they affect our mobility. And in the second step, we analyzed actually the currently expressed values. So we looked at mobility behaviors and lifestyles. We looked at travel patterns and how mobility values are reflected in them, as well on practices of transport appraisal methods, on public interest, and the role of communication. And all these aspects we are going to present you today, and we like to discuss and like to introduce them into the manifesto. So let's give it some input. I would like to introduce here the framework. So this is what we worked on in the first 6 months of the project, and these are the experts we were talking with to being able to find like different perspectives from different fields of research and of mobility. We find here a very broad picture. If you like to read like more about the summary of the interviews, you can just visit our website and you will find them. Here I just brought for you 4 short quotes which like show the direction maybe where we were working towards with them. And for instance, Laetitia Dablon, she's from the chair of Logistics City from France, and she pointed out that the freight sector needs to change its own paradigm regarding environment and social side, because like she really emphasized how different the logistics sector is from the and it's much more economically driven, for example. So this is very interesting interview. Also, Professor Udo Becker, he's from my university, from Dresden. He was chair of transport ecology, now emeritus. And he was very reluctant to find harsh words about other people on this planet. But for someone insisting on the continuation of the speed paradigm, I find harsh words. This is a clear lack of intelligence, a sign of ignorance and everything learned from physics in school, which is like a very radical statement, but it reflects as well his whole all life work on transportation ecology and all the struggles he had with that. And is as well, he gave us the feedback that he's very happy that we are trying to like tackle these issues in a broader perspective. Christoph Walter from PTV in Karlsruhe, he is an economist, and he said progress in civilization was always about thinking of the others. In this sense, he said, we must try to convince people to achieve a personal best case where the component best for society is always included. If people have responsibility for society and environment, they might accept a lower level of the personal best. To implement such new mindsets, democracy needs target-oriented leadership. And this is a very interesting aspect of an economist, that this is very important to understand that the best for society is as well a value that people embrace and that can be reflected as well in the higher level economical plans and politics and their everyday life as well. So it shouldn't be never be underestimated. Professor Luca Bertolini, he is chair of urban planning in University of Amsterdam, and he pointed out that the urgency due to climate change should be not the only driving factor to motivate people for a change. One important requirement is that people should have the choice to use different transport modes for daily activities. So he stated pretty much that the car is not the only mode of transport we should emphasize on, and that people need choices and opportunities. And all these ideas, they're coming like from observation from the last years. We did not ask them for future vision. We asked them about like, what do the people need now? What do the people like now or consider now as important? And all that together brings us to a framework, to a model that Götz and Defner already 12 years, 30 years ago developed, where they showed that mobility culture is actually a collection of many different aspects in society and in the world we see. So it is very difficult to describe itself, because it's like a combination of different factors. So we have here the political decisions and urban planning in the upper part, which are regulating, which are supporting with infrastructure, and therefore shaping cities, and therefore shaping as well mobility culture. Also, we have the historically produced space. So what was planning before? What were the people doing before? What did the former generations do? And how did they create the image of the city in what we live now? Also communication, the discourses, the image production, advertisements, we are going to hear a lot about that today as well, are a big aspect of mobility culture. And for sure as well, what I pointed out already, the individual with their lifestyles, the milieus, the socioeconomic situation in the city as well, and the connected travel behavior. And all of that, each of every factor of this model is actually influenced by the underlying values, the values of the planners and the values of the people who are carrying out these behaviors. So, and these values are often reflected in motives. So in the transport area, we have here a collection of different motives, which can be sorted to 3 different major pillars, where we have, like, first of all, mostly instrumental motives. Here it is the main aspect to like come from A to B, and to come from A to B on a low travel cost and a reliable way and comfortable way, being safe, but also like causing no harm for environment. These are like very like practical motives, which reflect some values inherent in the people. And then we have the symbolic, socially expressive motives of mobility, which are reflecting like more deeper values, like power, like the freedom of choice, of needs for privacy, needs for equality or equity. And we have an emotional side, which is like the feeling of the sense of control. Like when we're driving a car, we have the feeling that we can steer here as a vehicle, which is like a special sense of control and gives some going over these motives, it is easier to understand how the values actually reflect in our mobility behavior. I brought you here a very like universal model of values, which we find like behind all of these motives, which is like initiated by Schwartz already in the 90s. And here we see like basically all basic basic values of people that people can have sorted in a circle. And the main idea here is that the more far the values are apart from each other, the more difficult it is to combine them with each other. So it is a struggle to combine individualistic values like stimulation with security values, striving towards power, but also towards solidarity. So it is possible to combine that, but usually values are sorted hierarchically. So some are more important than others, and we would find values that are more close to each other being like more related often. We did then, as a next step, we tried to put the values and the motives together. So the motives I presented you before in the table are separatable towards these different values. And we see here one very interesting thing, that we actually in the motives we now reported, we see a gap here. So we see a gap in the altruistic, traditional solidarity and conservation area here. So our current mobility narrative we have actually does not really talk about this part, even though we actually have it in the debate, but we don't really like work towards that yet. So aspects like environmental responsibility, social responsibility, social justice, as well public wealth would be put in this area. So finding that and considering that the stability of values over time can change, and that we are obviously in a time of changing, we should consider that here are values that are currently like a little bit overseen. So as a last step here, let's come to the framework, which actually basically combines the importance of context, of the political system, of external constraints. We live through very interesting new external constraints now. Here we're, in the beginning of the project, we had the global warming and we had COVID-19. Now we have as well war with Russia, and in the middle of European Union, or in the middle of Europe, as well as some economical instabilities and a lot of geopolitical problems. Also, we have to combine practices with that. So what is the behavior? What is as well the planning side? How do those people behave? How do the planners plan? And how do the politicians decide? And all of this based on different value systems. So let me present you, this is the rebalance framework, which just should combine a little bit these different aspects we are tackling now. So thank you. This would be the first step. Andreu.
Yes, thank you very much, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
So here my question, thinking on the relevance you have been working for the manifesto. You mentioned at the beginning unsustainable patterns, and then shortly after the focus that sustainable urban mobility plans have on people instead of traffic. So for the manifesto, I'm thinking that maybe this unsustainability that all of us will recognize and is already part of the policies everywhere, the unsustainability in relation to environment, to move to something that we can call alienation. So instead of unsustainability, maybe we should be worrying the future of the alienation, in the sense that the mobility is until now has been organized to produce useful services. This means to move people at the right time, at the right place, to begin the working schedule. So it's kind of providing a solution for a mechanistic life, and cars provide kind of illusion of freedom, but it's an illusion, because at the end with the car, what we are doing finally in most cities, if you still use the car, is to be in a traffic jam. So kind of an illusion of freedom. Even the advertisement of the automobile industry is emphasizing this illusion of freedom. So what do you think? We can we can move from this language of the present based on sustainability to a language of the future, calling alienation the pattern that we are suffering. And if we imagine autonomous vehicles that are driving us, let's say, based on the information they have, not necessarily based on our choices, do you think that the word alienation or something similar can be inspiration for the manifesto to go beyond the unsustainability we already know?
Yes, this is a very interesting question you raised. I would agree absolutely in this point. I think that it seems like we actually reflect our values in our mobility now, but this is what you raised here already, that this might be an illusion, that we actually would have, as well as a political decider, the opportunity to use the same values and the same craving for freedom, for self-worthiness and so on, but making it easier to express it through other modes of transport as well, through other behaviors which are more sustainable. So yeah, I indeed would say that that to come over this illusion would help pretty much to the people as well, to being able to express their values and to live more aligned to motivations.
Thank you, Lisa. We have a round table among all participants on the webinar at the end. So maybe we can move as we plan it to the next task, which, if I'm not wrong, is 3.3 from Ghadir.
No, I would go over with the 3.2 here.
3.2.
Then you talk about
faster,
about
Lisa.
Patterns. Still me.
Because I was following the schedule in a mechanistic way, you know. Not in the meaningful way I should. I see.
So this is the problem of the word.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Andreu. Yes, as I said, I would like to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of the mobility culture of today, which you will find as well in our second deliverable, 3.2. And this is a task where me and my colleague, as well as in cooperation with the University of Žilina, with Ghadir and Tatjana, worked on. So we combined here some scientific disciplines, and I would like to quickly show you some of the of our findings. For the details, please read the deliverable. I would like to start here quickly with the I combined some the European Social Survey, which analyzed the basic values of Europeans overall EU 28, and I put them in the same diagrams, and we see here an interesting direction of a kind of a European value pattern, which is like pretty much towards oriented towards power, stimulation, pleasure, hedonic, and as well reflects, if you remember the framework, it reflects as well that in the universalism or benevolence tradition part, the values are not so much rooted actually or oriented. So this was a very interesting moment that it fits actually. What is important to understand that we have so many different travel styles and types of users all over European Union, and it always depends on the possibilities to move, on the options, the economics of the country, the everyday lifestyle of the people. but here you see just a collection of different styles we could have. So there are multi-modes, low environmentalists. Maybe you find yourself as well in one of these travel style types. So people who use like very different modes of transport, but are very low concerned about environment. Or we see like the ambivalents who have a strong car habit, but with very high environmental concerns. So maybe they are like in some constraints, which makes it difficult for them to change. Also, for instance, the active public transport green user who is like pretty much car free and lives through active modes and public transport. Haustein and Nielsen did in 2016, based on as well on the European Social Survey data, they clustered users of different vehicles, modes of transport all over European Union, and found a huge share of convenient drivers, but also of price-oriented PT users. And I will show you at the next slide how this comes. This is a very interesting clustered map, where we see that actually the travel style or the travel patterns are very much linked with the socioeconomic and political and societal status of the countries. Because here we see in the yellow the yellow countries here in cluster 4. This is actually the pretty much price-oriented public transport users, which have the highest share in these countries. On the other hand, we see here in cluster 2, for instance, we see like rather the convenience drivers, which is like in France, in Italy, in Great Britain, and so on. But also like a lot of, we see here the biggest difference actually in how much can people choose to be not price oriented, right? So depending on the economical situation, especially, and of the options, we see that it seems to be kind of a privilege to being able to actually act according to values and to motives, and not according to external constraints. And we see here an interesting thing, what I want to like raise today, that there's a difference between the materialist and post-materialist values, which were like defined a long time ago by Engelhardt. He stated basically that materialistic societies rather strive towards security, safety, economical wealth, and so on. And post-materialist values are then rather the self-expression and freedom and other values. And we see here like rather striving towards security, towards price efficiency, is in the Eastern European countries, as well as in Spain and Portugal, here very important. Nowadays, or today actually, we again have a little shift, like what I mentioned before already, like do we maybe in the Central Europe as well shift a little bit more again towards materialistic ideas? So do we have enough capacity to think about sustainable behavior, or is it now rather talking about price orientation? So I would like to raise this thought. As well, I wanted to show you, the most mentioned motives of mobility. Here, actually, by country on the left side, we see here like that most of the countries, most of the time mention speed to reduce the time it takes to make the trip as the main goal for mobility. Also, reliability and comfort is an aspect, and we even see in 2 European countries, in Romania and Bulgaria, that there's no alternative actually for the mode they use. But still, these 3, comfort, speed, and reliability, seem to be like very important drivers for mobility nowadays. I would like to raise here as well that maybe this comes as well from the way of asking. So if the current narrative basically assumes that these are measurements to measure a proper mobility development, that it is not so surprising that these are the three factors. Maybe there are more underlying factors which are as well important and which maybe like would express rather the value change, but as the data is collected in a very like scientific and strict way, maybe there's not enough room for new ideas here. So maybe we should think about that as well. On the right side, we see by the means of transport as well, the motives of using them. And we see here a very high level of car convenience or car usage by convenience. And also speed, but still we see here as well the active mobility modes are still important and still tackle as well convenience and speed needs, also as like price needs, environmental reasons. So we don't see here in the more sustainable modes of transport, we don't see a drop in all these factors which are important for people. Another interesting aspect is the travel time worthwhileness rating through the different transport mode categories here by gender. And we basically see here as well like that the emerging cycling, micromobility, the walking, and as well as the public transport actually ranks pretty much high in the worthwhileness. So how worthwhile was the travel for you was the question here. So we see here that what people perceive during traveling is not only like the best aspect in private cars. So this fits as well maybe to the question of Andreu, which he asked before. So I don't pass my best time when I'm transported in a private motorized car. One thing we should not skip or forget is the information and communication technologies rising, and there are some like the major questions, basically how much do the personal devices influence mobility behavior? And we see that they actually influence, that they actually create differences in how can people use mobility, how can people be part of the society of the everyday life. And we see as well that this ICT do support our maybe worthwhileness and support our what we do during traveling. So we start using them during traveling and we can like carry out activities during traveling with that. So we see that in case of public transport, passengers are mainly browsing or listening while traveling for most age groups. So we have here somehow some private device, some privacy, which we can carry out as well in the public space. So we can sit in the public transport and organize our private life, listen to our favorite music. This is a very new aspect as well, and it should be tackled. We saw in COVID how much or not ICT substitute travel needs. We see that actually people lowered their travel amount when it was necessary, but at the moment where it was possible again, people left the houses and started traveling again. So there seems to be a strong need as well to be on the move, and we cannot completely substitute our social activities with virtual life, but actually we have like added some new maybe, and we added some mobility option with that, I would say. So for concluding that, and this would be already the wrap up of the current mobility of today. People want to be mobile. The analyzed motivations stem often from instrumental considerations, so like speed, price, convenience, and we should question if this is like the best way or the best focus we can put. then there's an added environmental concern, but the variety of motivations to be mobile reflect the different behavioral elements of a mobility culture. Then we have that the ratio of the different mobility styles in society can reflect in turn the prevailing mobility culture. And I would really like to raise the discussion if these factors are exhaustive. Yeah, actually, thank you for listening. This is like the part from literature, from our interviews we carried out. What we consider as this is how mobility is currently carried out. In the next 2 parts of this webinar, we are going to talk about more aspects on mobility and values. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much. Really, really, really interesting and meaningful for the purpose we have. Now let's move to task 3.3, the current values behind the politics of mobility, critical review by Ghadir. If I may ask you, Ghadir, to stick on the 10 minutes time, more or less, we have ahead to say that we have to go fast in the kind of project we are, which is praising slowness. But
can you see my screen?
we are still on the frame of being, working according to the schedule.
Yes, of course. So I will try to be as quick as I can. So my name is Ghadir Pourhashem. I'm a senior researcher and also project manager for the European funded projects at the Department of International Research Projects of University of Žilina in Slovakia. So before starting explaining about what we have done in task 3.3 as a part of the work package 3, I would like also to make a small remark about the focus group that we have done also part of the task 3.2 to collect I would say the feedback from our expert about those values that Lisa was mentioning in her presentation. So most of those values that she was mentioning somehow also emphasized by our experts in focus group. So now I will move to the task 3.3 as a part of work package 3. So this task has been done with the aim to review the policy goals in European policy and strategic documents and regulations, besides to investigate their relation with public interest with a specific regard to EU mobility and transport policies. So to do so, our work has been divided in 2 parts. The first part focused on the practices, the current practices of transport appraisals that are applied by EU member states. So we have done a critical review. So in order to have in-depth analysis of existing transport appraisal methods in Europe and recommended methods again at the EU and the national level to firstly identify areas of convergence and divergence among the member states. Secondly, to find neglected or under-researched values for multimodal transport appraisal beyond this traditional speed, time, price paradigm with respect to the environmental boundaries, and also people's well-being perspective to see that to what extent they can be in alignment with EU policies such as EU Green Deal, Transport, Health and Environment Pan-European programs, EU Mobility Package that has been announced in 2013, 2014 Paris Declaration, and so on, so on. So for this, so we reviewed all member states' regulations and standards for appraisal of the public transport projects. So our review and investigation brought us to 3 different methods or techniques that currently are in practice, or as 2 first of them, cost-benefit analysis and the multi-criteria analysis. So they are used by some member states, but the third one, the social welfare analysis, is mostly used by the academics. So the cost-benefit analysis is the most popular one that are predominantly used by member states and recommended by European Commission and also national strategies. So this cost-benefit analysis, the multi-criteria analysis have been also proposed on the basis of the criticism of this cost-benefit analysis. So our investigation shows that the majority of the member states, they are currently using the cost-benefit analysis, but some countries, 9 European countries, Austria, Czech Republic, and Hungary, and some other member states, they are also complemented CBA with other national measures. And the social welfare analysis that is currently very popular among the scholars, and so they are recommending this social welfare analysis as a replacement of the cost-benefit analysis that I have highlighted there. So it relies on the individual subjective well-being assessment. So, and that they are trying by proposing and applying this method to find the best balance between the competing objectives of efficiency and the equality that are, and the other valuation, and evaluate them of the, from the individual benefit and the cost based on the people preferences. So they are trying to embed through these terms or concepts in appraisal of the transport projects. So in terms of the major impacts, the major impacts that we mapped in the transport project appraisal methods. So so two items that they are currently have a major impact in appraisal: financial impacts such as travel time saving, safety, cost, travel, vehicle cost operating. And so, and the other one is so the environmental impact in terms of the noise, air pollution, and the climate impact. However, the noise and air pollutions, they are part of the cost-benefit analysis in most of the member states, but there is still some kind of I would say reluctancy for including the climate impact in their appraisal system. Our analysis also showed that three values that have been highlighted in the slides should be considered for the multimodal transport appraisals. So the equity and the social inclusion. The social inclusion, so it's a kind of can you see my screen or? My screen. Yeah. The equity, is the accessibility of the social inclusion. They are, the values that they have been less paid attention by standards or methods that we mapped. The hedonic values or experiential values that people have when they are using a specific type of the transport mode should be also be part of the transport appraisal method. And the health values, so they are, it means that the values that refers, or the values that people, to what extent people they are interested to pay for the, to improve their health situation. In some countries, like in Nordic countries, they have these health values as a part of the appraisal system for their active mode project. So they already embedded these health values in their systems. So the second part of our work also focused on the investigation on the concept of the public interest. So the main activities that have been done was mapping the legal meaning of the concept of the public policy and the public interest. So by reviewing the different legislations and the policies that are currently in practice. So we had also analysis for each domain of transport, air, road, rail, and inland waterways to see that to what extent definition of the public interest and they have been reflected there. So, and we also analyzed discussed the relation between the public interest and the state aid rules, to what extent they should be also taken into account. But our result or our analysis shows that the public interest still is an abstract. It's very difficult to be part of the regulation and policies, because it needs to pass through the parliament or some kind of authority should, approve it, and then it can come to the practice. It makes a little bit the procedure complicated. So as conclusion, I would say that even if our result shows that there is a general agreement on the use of the cost-benefit analysis at EU level, which requires each factor to be valued in a monetary sense. We should monetize each factor for appraisal of the public transport project. On the other side, there is a sizable variation concerning the inclusion of the dominant factors or values, such as travel time saving across the EU member states. But what is currently paid less attention, our result shows that in the EU legislation and policies on the inclusiveness, we should put citizen in the center of the transport and the mobility planning at the national and EU level, which needs a more comprehensive understanding of human nature in terms of values, sentiments, beliefs, and individuals, as I also highlighted here. So currently, or I would say the most, the transport project appraisal, our investigation showed that mostly based on the maximizing benefit of the transport infrastructure and services. And the people and the group, those the people they are missing, in this kind of the appraisal system. In particular, those people that they have problem with mobility or they have the mobility disability. Another item that should be also part of the future or I would say the manifesto, is equity in transport as a part of the social welfare analysis that currently is not the core and the mainstream of the project appraisal. So in general, I would say our general vision after this is I would say analysis and study shows that incorporating people's well-being measures such as equity, accessibility, livability, hedonic values should be further emphasized in current urban mobility planning and also appraisal system for public projects. Thank you very much. So if you have any question.
Yes, Ghadir, thank you very much.
I try to be as quick as I can.
Yes, congratulations.
I didn't go too much in details, but for those that they are interested, they can,
congratulations.
Deliverable 3.3, so to get more details and information about the work we have done.
Yes. Let me ask about the cost-benefit analysis as it is defined in the 2014 DigiRegio guideline. You said that the equity is missing and somehow should be included, but I have a more fundamental concern on the way the cost-benefit analysis is defined, because it emphasizes saving time as the most important social benefit. Most of the projects may be 70–80%. So you calculate saving times and maybe the savings in operational cost, and you have most of the benefits. So you can forget about any other thing. But this is in a kind of contradiction with the projects we try to promote in the sustainable urban mobility plans, like traffic calm. You apply traffic calm measure in a given city. And of course, it causes a reduction on speeds and capacity speeds and increasing traffic and travel times. So the benefit of traffic calm is not the kind of benefit that is measuring the cost-benefit analysis as we defined them. So to what extent something fundamental has to be changed in the way we apply cost-benefit analysis to make the cost-benefit analysis more in line with the values that we see from the previous presentation by Lisa that are emerging in our society.
Yes, thank you. It's a very good question because, you know, as you said, now we are using all these factors or measures to see that to what extent, you know, this is the big concern of the most transport planners and also decision makers to save time, to be fast as much as possible. But I was saying that we should somehow shift from this economic point of view to more social inclusion view, that our social welfare analysis would be the best replacement or somehow to complement the cost-benefit analysis, because it also integrates the efficiency from the infrastructure side and the equity values. So incorporating the social equity, you know, weights in terms of the willingness to pay for different groups of people would help us to have also somehow the evaluation or the, I would say, see that the net social benefit for a specific group, not only for the infrastructure. You know, as you said, if we create a new street, perhaps we have less traffic congestion because people, they will use a new road. Or if we, you know, create a somehow more parking place, we will solve the problem of, you know, searching for parking. But I was saying that for those that they are not using this kind of the transport system, we should come up with this kind of the equity values, the social inclusion values, you know, to be part of the decision process for the transport appraisal system. We should not count only on, you know, the money, monetary values. So I would say that our manifesto more or less should, I mean, emphasize the importance of switching from this cost-benefit analysis. I know that, you know, it's very difficult because this cost-benefit analysis in practice for many years, and it would take more time, you know, to change this system at the national level and at EU level. I guess that the most important one should be, I mean, emphasizing at the EU level, you know, at least for those projects that the Commission is giving fund, we should use this method. So then, you know, we can go a little bit at the, you know, the level of the countries. So then when they say that the Commission is, you know, promoting and using this kind of the method, perhaps they would be also interested, you know, to change their legislations and, you know, the system that currently we are using for giving fund for transport project, or, you know, the improvement of the transport and the traffic situation in their countries or in their cities.
Thank you very much, Ghadir.
You're
So
welcome.
we move to the last presentation, task 3.4, the role of communication in shaping the European mobility culture by Daniel. So the floor is yours, Daniel.
Thank you, Andreu. Good afternoon, everyone. I will try to share my screen now. Okay, I hope you can see it. Now it should be fine. Okay, so I'm going to present task 3.4. My name is Daniel Rodriguez Cassolà. I work at ISINNOVA, which is a research institute based in Rome. As I was saying, the role of communication in shaping the European mobility culture. This task was conducted by ISINNOVA and was essentially an exercise of desk research that led to the writing of the associated deliverable that bears the same name. This deliverable consists of an in-depth analysis on the different forms of media, social media, and institutional communication, and the way mobility values are channeled to citizens. the influence of media in promoting certain values and conceptions of new imagery has been carried out through this research of scientific papers and also great research. So the conceptual and imagery review includes advertisements, movies, popular press articles, and artistic production. This research comprises scientific literature also in order to showcase and understand in terms of mobility, the cultural context in which we are living and evolving, and also to take a peek into the near future. The analysis that was made somehow links the historical evolution with the present world and the hot topics and innovations that could determine the mobility of tomorrow. Our review of cinema, advertising, press articles, artistic production allowed us to unveil keywords, signals, and messages reflecting the evolution of the mainstream mobility culture. A couple of examples of this can be seen on the right of the slide. A very famous scene from the movie Roman Holiday with Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant, and below an advertisement from the Spanish car maker SEAT. The first image is a symbol of new forms of tourism and role models in the 1950s. And the second one could be a representation of currently conveyed messages where car is king and an adult serious thing, while bicycle are, as you can see, are just for kids. This combined word and image search that spans more than 150 years identified dominant mobility concepts and values channeled to citizens. Some of them are explicit, others are underlying, more hidden, such as speed, comfort, freedom, privilege, wealth, status symbol, cost, conviviality, you name it. This deliverable was built putting together all the relevant information by following a chronology that contains an analysis that shows the cultural changes in Europe through the influence exerted by the media on mainstream language, and of course also symbols or icons that help form and shape the language. Along the text, we use a time evolution of the popular mobility culture, as I said before, advertising, cinema, literature, arts. This is as a fil rouge, as a guiding thread. We start from the beginnings of contemporary transport and mobility until we reach modernity, and then more recently we dip into contemporary times. The report contains a lot of graphic support, something almost obvious and elementary, since we live in an era full of images. You cannot dissociate them from culture. That means, and at least is our guess, that it's interesting and attractive report to the potential reader. For instance, another graphic example here is this beautiful painting called Autoportrait, Tamara in a Green Bugatti by Tamara de Lempicka in 1929, that served to celebrate the start of women's emancipation in the period between World War I and World War II. Just a quick note, you can find the document in the project website, and the deliverable was also nicely posted online by our colleagues at Ersilia in the third issue of the Journal of Mobility, Cultures and Policies in November last year. The different sections were split in a beautiful composition for an easy browsing, so the readers can pick the concepts or chapters that interest them the most. Then as a quick summary of the content, let's say that Rebalance aims at describing the narrative and the essence that shape the mobility culture of today. This report helps visualize the influence over time of communication on the European mobility culture and how the media have conveyed and represented mobility concepts. We can say that cultural changes can be analyzed and among other things through the evolution of the mainstream language we use by the media mostly, and by the way values are conveyed or channeled to citizens. With the examples I said before, we could also add more recently video games, social media. These searches gives us a significant sample of popular communication that spans several decades. And we can see here, we can unveil signals and messages that reflect the evolution of the mainstream mobility culture. and we can identify here dominant representations of these values and their dynamics over time. In that sense, cultural practices both reflect and define group identities, whether the group is a small subculture or a nation, and thus the cultural field is a place for creativity and also for meaning making. But it is also a battlefield. Who controls the media and popular culture, and what messages they communicate are central on how social life is organized and how power operates. The media are arguably the most important form of cultural production in our society. But we must also say that digital technologies are creating new ways of participating in the media that are changing the very foundations of cultural production and consumption. I will get back to it on the next slide. This report follows a trend that relates the developments in mobility and communication throughout history. We start our journey in the 19th century. That's a meaningful step with the beginning of the railways, and not coincidentally, the telegraph at that time followed a parallel path and started the era of mass communication. We don't have to wait long to witness the appearance of the most widely used means of transport in the world, and arguably the most referred mobility token in communication, which is the car. Then in this parallel path, the radio collapsed space and enabled instantaneous mass communication. And this dynamic between society and mass media that is so prevalent today started to develop with these items, with these tokens. Then brand advertising became fuel for the mass media, which turned into thanks to that, turned into huge machineries of cultural production. And also related to car marketing, found the perfect loudspeaker, and publicity became bright, became attractive, became impressionistic, depicting idealized scenes at the beginning directed to the wealthy classes and then to the general population. Also a note here on air travel, which was rare, but the people and the press was fascinated by it. And then we can point out the start of modernity with the democratization of the means of transport, mostly through the proliferation of the automobile, as I said, but which also kind of paradoxically became a status symbol as well. In that sense, it went hand by hand with television and its appeal to the masses. The culture industry began to dominate the cultural scene, and then a mass society appeared and began to share mass pleasures, well, in that sense, cheap mass travel and tourism. Related also to culture here, we see that homogeneity was accelerated. This homogeneous layer was expanded, was accelerated by cinema, radio, television, which offer attractive models from America to European citizens. The ideas of independence and freedom gained ground in the public mind, and we can say, looking back at the 60s, that placidly survives the effects of counterculture. Then in the 80s, in the 1980s, neoliberalism reordered social reality and our status as individuals. And regarding media, a lot of corporate takeovers, mergers were the common rule. Hollywood also imposed its styles of movie to almost every national cinema in the world. And this, the result of this is that in recent decades, the dominant trend goes from values of docility and obedience to values of self-determination and equality. With the end of Cold War, at least the old Cold War, now we have it seems that we have a new one. We saw a crystallization of a new global paradigm whose maximum social, political, and economic exponent is globalization. Postmodernity is also a thing. It is a time in which disenchantment and a bet on individual progress, and then the mass media as transmitters of the truth which is individualistic, an individualistic truth that led to an individualistic turn at the end of the past century, and all the values associated with it, freedom, excitement of life, pleasure, ambition, all kinds of power, social power, wealth, authority. The media went along perfectly fine with this. Then for the last step, we don't stop at the present, and we take a peek at the hot topics and innovations for the first century and the near future, to serve as a link with the following phases of the project, and also to make clear that the subject of mobility culture is in constant evolution. Today, technology and digitalization are actually exerting the influence on mobility, and we have these new hot topics and innovation that connect with mobility issues. For example, we have gender. We see that mobility is not gender neutral, although this situation is changing slowly. A male and stereotypically a technical perspective still dominates today's mobility. Then we have environmental and electrical. We see, for example, that car manufacturers and marketing companies are putting the accent on the advantage of electric vehicle, in tune also with environmental friendliness, the absence of emissions. It seems very cool at the present time. We have also the topic of inequalities, where in practice differences in the ability and capacity to travel do exist, despite being the freedom of movement one of the fundamental principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We also have status symbol and alternatives. In this case, we can say that millennials, especially men, are less interested in owning and driving cars than the previous generation. That's an important issue, and are more attracted to alternative modes of transport. We have also this duality active-passive, where active mobility is on the rise, especially in the cities and downtown areas, while on the other hand, passive mobility is more and more associated with motorized mobility. The topic of technology, where besides autonomous vehicles, e-scooters, e-bikes, mobility technology also includes electrification with electric vehicles, batteries. We have fleet management and connectivity with all the data management, security, cybersecurity. We have also car sharing. We have logistics. We have this almost sci-fi concept of urban air mobility. Then we have sharing. Here we can see that advances in information and communication technologies and ICT are enabling the growth of real-time carpooling and ride-sharing to improve system efficiency. It needs to be seen that if that's actually a solution. But we can say that there's a change in consumer behavior. In the sharing economy, ownership is no longer the target. The focus is shifted onto service, mobility as a service, for example. And then another hot topic would be the last one, would be privacy. We know that EU citizens have the right to protection of their personal data, but we can also say that wealth of information is held by just a few companies and public institutions that know a lot about us, and in turn we know so little about them that could be a problem. Then for finishing this presentation, when we talk about communication, also almost inevitably we have to deal with fake news. So a small section of the deliverable was also focused on the phenomenon of fake news and post-truth. And now for real, the last point would be the innovations, which we talk about 3 of them that we consider that could be taken into account to foster the achievement of sustainable mobility beyond pure technological advances, which are pervasive. And we could also consider internet and social media, where the diffusion of information and telecommunication technologies has transformed the mobility, has transformed reality, has transformed the mobility of passengers and freight, and resulted in notable economic and social impacts. Now we have more intensive interactions, many of which are associated with as a consequence with new forms of mobility. We have the innovation of nudging. It's been for quite some years among us, and in this case, advances in behavioral science provide a new toolkit of theories, models, and empirical methods for designing transportation programs and evaluating policies. The main purpose of nudging interventions in the transport system is to promote sustainable driver behavior. And then we have social marketing, which are community-based programs to encourage also more socially desirable behavior. As a final thought, when we wonder about the future, we see now that younger generations are largely shifting away from the overemphasis of speed and comfort optimization for traffic, and show a growing environmental and health consciousness. The intensive use of digital technologies is also in tune with that, and also sharing instead of owning, as I mentioned before. Will these changes, will these shifts initiate this cultural shift that will allow us to reach a sustainable mobility culture? Let's hope so. And thank you. That would be all regarding 3.4.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much. There is an advertisement by BWM that comes to my mind. I would like to share with you and have your opinion about. It's you see a beautiful BMW on a rural road, just crossing mountains, and the advertisement just says, "Do you like driving? Do you like driving?" So, in a sense that, okay, forget about all these complicated, sophisticated arguments of global warming and sustainability and all of this. At the end, driving is very fun. Driving is fun. It's fun. So probably young people don't like driving on the city, but still they drive. Driving is fun. I don't imagine an advertisement saying mass transport is fun. Or do you like taking the metro every day to go 8 or 8:30 to work? So it seems that the advertisement is emphasizing something that maybe is deep in our motives, which is entertaining, which is fun, which is freedom, which is and maybe this is an illusion. Going back to the first discussion we had, this is an illusion, but very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. What we have here, I've also seen that advertisement. What we have here is an appeal to the guts. It's not rational. It goes directly to your emotion. So, but they can do that because we have been raised in that atmosphere. We have been bombarded by these kind of messages that, as you said before, car gives you freedom, car gives you all the comforts and none of the disadvantages. But when you consider it rationally, that something that is not doing this publicity, of course you see all the disadvantages. In this case, the generation gap is also, of course, it's a recurrent issue, but with mobility and also with car ownership, I think that the gap is much wider. I would focus my efforts for the paradigm shift on the younger populations, and I would forget about the adults and elders, and because the investment return on them is not worthy. So okay, let's let them do all these adverts for the old guys who still believe these messages, and let's focus on a different sector of the population.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Let me suggest a slight change on the program. So maybe I can summarize my 5 conclusions, key conclusions for redrafting the manifesto. And maybe we can close with a roundtable with all of you that would like to share with us some last remarks. So my 5 conclusions, just to be executive. Number 1, people-sensitive policies, including transportation and public space. So the sustainable urban mobility plans that maybe we like more are those that include public transport, public spaces, sorry, not just mobility. So the idea of not just people-centric, but people-sensitive plans that include mobility and public space. Maybe this is a concrete suggestion we can emphasize. The second one is when we say calming the city, maybe we should be more ambitious and say calming people's lives. So it's about reducing the stress as well as the standardization of the lives we have been living, and many people have been living in, I think all over the world, in developed as well as underdeveloped countries. The third idea or wording that I take from this conversation is the alienation of the patterns of mobility. Not just that we have unsustainable patterns, this all we know, but maybe we have alienated patterns in the sense that we maybe don't have much choice here. So public transport is standardizing our lives in a way. It's very useful. Maybe it's absolutely needed, but it's not something that gives us much choice for creativity, let's say. And the cars and the private mobility maybe is many times an illusion of freedom. Then this leads us to the post-materialistic values that we were talking as well, which goes beyond pure usefulness, and also is including the idea of meaningful mobility, meaningful lives. And then I have as well the idea of emphasizing research on social choice theory as a paradigm for democratic project appraisal and policy assessment that goes beyond cost benefit, let's say, or includes cost benefit in a broader sense. And then also in the last conversation with Daniel, maybe we should also emphasize the concept of notching. Notching was also in his presentation. So we have to deliver rational information, in a rational way, our information, but also taking care of the emotional part of it. So people are reading any information we provide from their emotions. So nudging may be a way to induce in a positive way more sensitive behavior on mobility. Well, these are the 6 ideas and wording I have in my mind now to redraft the manifesto. But let's have a round table, and maybe each one of you can contribute with an additional idea. So let's begin by Lisa, maybe following the order we had, being mechanistic again.
Thank you.
You can say no, Lisa, you can say no.
No, but this wouldn't fit the mechanism, right? Thank you. I think these 5 statements are pretty much reflecting many aspects. I just wanted to raise the thing is always coming into my mind, like what happened if we, like 20, 30 years ago, started developing public transport towards more convenient, freedom, hedonistic aspects, or if we started, instead of the cars, developing bicycles being like extra comfortable, extra convenient, extra easy to use, and the whole infrastructure would like perfectly fit on bicycles, but not on cars. What would have happened then? So maybe it's not like inherently the car, which is like, encountering all our wishes and needs that we emotionally have, but maybe this is just made and could have been different and could be different as well.
Very good. Ghadir, maybe you now?
Yeah, say that, yeah, as I mentioned, so social welfare analysis should, take the place of the cost-benefit analysis. And as you may already know, that there is now a big European Innovation Action Project that is focusing on public transport in EU. So as it's a kind of a project that is emphasizing public transport as a backbone in cities transport for climate neutral cities. And so it shows that, we are going in this way, that, the public transport should really play the role of should be the backbone of the transport system. On the other side, I would say also, we were discussing about the public interest, but, making some kind of new, I would say, facilities for instance, the active mode, it should not make restriction for other people, because it's against the public interest and, this kind of the values we have there for the freedom of the movement and goods. So giving more incentive to other transport should not, make some kind of limitation or restriction for other group of people. Daniel was mentioning that, we should focus on the young people, to change their behavior, and so to be more into the green mode of transport. But these people, when they change, age change, or when they are going to the different life stage, when they are married, when they have children, they definitely shift to the new type of the pattern of for their travel. If they were not interested to own a car, for some reasons they will own. So we should also take into account. So our manifesto should not, make some, we should focus on the behavioral change, but we should not make people's choices limited. One more thing that I would like also to mention, because we were saying about the role of the advertisement, we should not also forget about the role of the word of mouth. So even if you have not a good experience about some specific mode of transport or some public spaces, by spreading this word to your friends, so perhaps they will not use that transport mode or those places that you didn't have a good experience of using them. So I guess that the word of mouth should be also somehow, in my view, be taken into account if possible in our manifesto. So to what extent we can influence, this also word of mouth to have a better paradigm shift and those principles that we were discussing today.
Okay, thank you very much, Ghadir. Daniel?
Well, yes, I added to the public interest concept, which is I totally agree. I think that another concept to be included in the manifesto is democratization. It's a very wide term. I will try to be more precise in this sense, because if we look at my presentation, the history of communication has always been unidirectional, one way. So strict sensu, that is not communication at all. For that you need interacting. you need both sides to interact. And you could call it, until now, you could call it propaganda, marketing, you name it. And today, thanks to the new technologies, the relationship between mass media and society is changing very fast. That is being reflected also in culture. And passive consumers are turning into prosumers, that they also produce ideas and new concepts and new lifestyles are being shared more horizontally and less vertically. All the precautions here, having in mind the bot farms and fake news and so on. And I hope that society will manage to create an atmosphere in which participative approaches are taken and more diverse voices are heard, which in turn will result in a fair, just, inclusive mobility, at least more than until it has been now. And insisting on my approach, on my love for the new generations, I think they will decide and will define what type of world and what type of mobility we will have.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So we have the closing remarks by Andrea. Or
yes,
before another Lisa we have, which is Jens. Maybe Jens, you would like to say something at this point?
Well, just a small remark. I just want to say that, you know, mobility is embedded, well, into several other social, economic, and if it differs from other cultures and other areas, then we get some. This could be, for instance, as you said, calming people's lives. I mean, still children learn to be the first one is a good thing. They learn this in kindergarten. So I think this we have to ensure that this is not only about mobility. It's much more. So, and I think this at least should be considered into the manifesto, and this is behind our control, let's say. But I think this is worth mentioning. So just
okay, thank you very much, and sorry, Andrea. Now maybe we will
no problem. Well, I would have a number of remarks, but we're really out of time. So let me allow me one remark on context, because I think this discussion about nudging is something which has a great potential, but we haven't come to a point of the discussion where we know exactly what we're talking about. I mean, when we say nudging. To be provocative, I mean, if nudging is something which means that you are not imposing something with hard rules, laws, or bans or things like that, but somehow putting pressure on people in a soft way, one could claim that this is what has happened all the time. Only the nudging and the pressure has been applied by the so-called market forces, as opposed to, you know, the concept which is very dear to some economists, the concept of a benevolent dictator who clearly has a different approach. Now, I am very much in favor of pushing for the adoption of the nudging general concept, but I think we need to be more specific about what it means. What are the tools available to whoever is involved, the policymakers, the private stakeholders, to actually implement a nudging strategy, a nudging policy? If somebody has the answer, well, I would be particularly happy to listen to that, but I'm not sure we are at the stage where there is a common sense about this nudging idea, which is now very fashionable, and I think the logic and the values behind it, we can share them easily, but I'm not sure we know how to go about it. So that's a small remark I wanted to make, which ties into both the appraisal concept, but also to the role of advertising and who exerts which pressure that ends up by defining, whether we are aware of it or not, our individual mobility culture. I think that we should be somehow convincing in our manifesto in proposing a shift towards a nudging, if we all agree on this, but be more specific about how to do it. Okay, having said that, I think it's my role now to say just a few words, but very few on the conclusions. I mean, we've been practicing these online formats for now quite a long time and more intensely since the COVID, but there was still a bit, it's not always easy to strike a balance between the fact that, you know, that in these events, the attention span is limited in time. On the other hand, we have lots of things to say. We want to have interaction with people. It's not easy to find this balance. So apologies if it has been maybe a one-way type of exercise, although I'm sure that it was for me extremely enriching, and this exercise at the end of the process, which amounts to trying to what the French call extraire la substantifique moelle, to draw the real primary gist of our work is very useful per se. We will continue that in the next weeks. As I said at the very beginning, next Thursday we have a second installment of this recap discussion exercise with the discussion of the vision and how we reached a vision of future mobility culture that hopefully reflects both the analysis of and the criticism, the questions raised by the first step, but additional input coming from more imaginative interaction with a number of stakeholders. And then a third event which will recap how we have tried to translate all these discussions into proposals for strategy and the roadmap. Last but not least, on the November 22nd, when in the meantime all these inputs will have somehow trickled down into a last version of the manifesto, we will have a somehow more celebrative event where we will present the manifesto hopefully to a wide audience. It will be a hybrid event, so people who want to attend in Brussels are very welcome to do so. Let us know if you would like to do that. And that's it. So thank you very much. We're trying to be as interactive as possible, as I'm sure you have realized. If only you look at the number of events that were organized over the past 2 years in various formats, really we were eager and very active in promoting interaction. Never enough, of course, but let's keep going, and thank you all for attending. I guess that's the end. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks again, and see you next Thursday, I hope.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.